Please welcome Tom Parker, Group Technology Officer of Accenture Security.
Good afternoon, everyone. Almost good evening. That's a great segue into today's presentation from my part, because what I'm going to talk to you today about is ROI on security investments. My name is Tom Parker. I'm the GTO of our security business. What that means is I'm responsible for helping our clients engage with transformative technologies that really help make a difference in their environments, trying to help them truly prioritize many of those investments. And what we're going to look at today is how do we know whether something is a bad investment or not? How do we really understand whether we're getting the ROI out of that investment that we expect? 15 years ago, I presented at Black Hat on a topic which is very near to my heart, adversary characterization. A year after that, I wrote a book on the topic, Cyber Adversary Characterization. Didn't sell very well. I don't think it's just because of the lack of punch in the name of the book. I do believe that it was because at the time, we weren't really talking about attribution a whole lot. We weren't really thinking about who the adversaries are that are coming after us. And I was involved in a number of workshops in DC. I am English, but they did let me in at the time to talk to some three-letter agencies. And that was really the only community that cared about this topic at the time. Today, every time we hear a breach, WannaCry, Petya, whatever it is, the first thing we're talking about is who did it, who's behind this attack, what's their sophistication level, how can we protect against it. Now the thing is that we have that conversation, but that doesn't really turn into anything actionable in terms of how are we going to make ourselves better from a security posture standpoint. How am I going to invest in technology that I buy from vendors? How am I going to use that to inform the research dollars that I'm spending on building better security products, either internally as a CISO or as a product vendor? Now, a year ago, or earlier this year, I believe, Accenture released a study on, and actually I should progress the slide. There we go. Now, I should note that this is probably the only presentation you will see from someone from Accenture that has one slide this year. Probably ever, actually, so you're welcome. We're not going to talk about that yet, but noodle through it. So we released a study on the ROI of security. And some of the key points of the study looked at how much does it cost, how much do incidents cost on average a year, how much is each incident costing, how are we spending our money on technology to protect our networks. A couple of data points for you. First is the average company is spending about $11.9 million a year on responding to security incidents. So we're not talking about the technology you're buying, just incident response costs and related fees. The average cost per incident is around $2.5 million. And we're factoring into that malware attacks, WannaCry, Petya, and the works. Now, what we see here on the slide today is just a handful of some of the security vendors that the CISO is getting pitched on a daily basis, and it's a little overwhelming. The irony of my job is I am a vendor, but I'm getting called every day, just as you guys are, because everyone wants to go to market with Accenture, right? We have a global network, we have boots on the ground everywhere, everyone wants to partner with us. And so I feel your pain, and this is difficult to navigate, right? So how do we navigate that? Well, when we think about return on investment in security, what we want to really look at is reducing those numbers, those dollar numbers that we spoke about. How do we reduce that $2.5 million per incident down to a level where is more manageable, and we're seeing the cost of our security technologies really helping us with our ROI. So I think it's important to note that I often get calls from, actually after the BOA, because after Bank of America came out and they said they had an unlimited cybersecurity budget. Hands up for the folks that got a call from their board saying, "Are we spending enough on cybersecurity?" Right? And I was getting a lot of those calls from CISOs and saying, "Hey, how do we help answer this question?" And I mean, you can answer that in a million different ways, right? As a vendor, you could be like, "No, you're not spending enough. We need more money." But if we actually think about answering that question, I think there are two things that we really our philosophy is two things to look at. The first is, are we spending enough on non-security dollars to help support the agenda of the CISO, right? A lot of the breaches that we're seeing, especially if you look back at WannaCry and Petya, the root causes, it's the things that aren't exciting to talk about, but it's the fundamentals of any security program. It's patch management, it's asset management. And those fixes fall outside of the budget of the CISO most of the time, or should fall outside of the budget. We're seeing a lot of security organizations, the CISO having to create their own asset management inventory because they just aren't getting what they need from the IT department. So that's number one, and we'll save that for a different presentation because I think that's a whole separate dialogue. And then there's the security spending. So how do we increase our ROI on the things that we do control? So during our study, we looked at 9 different technology genres that don't necessarily align with what we have up in the slide today. Can anyone guess what 2 types of technologies that had the lowest ROI in the environment? Any guess? Okay. DLP and perimeter protection, right? Spending a lot of money on next-gen perimeter protection. Some of it's pretty good, right? But if we deploy it en masse at all of our locations, it's going to be pretty expensive. And then DLP. And my colleagues here that have been on the red side of this business will know that DLP technologies forever have been really for making sure that people don't accidentally send sensitive attachments, right, that have been marked with sensitive. It's not going to do a whole lot. And if someone has a great idea for a DLP solution, I think that industry is there to be disrupted. But those were the 2 that were getting a lot of investment in with a low return. Now, the areas that weren't getting a lot of investment in, that we were seeing a lot of disruption in and real ROI, is user behavioral analytics and endpoint network behavioral analytics. And why is that? Why aren't we seeing more of an investment in our security portfolios internally as CISOs or security vendors? And that's one of the reasons we love Team8. We work with them very closely on some technologies like Clarity, which we're using for IoT environments to get visibility that we've never had in the past, getting huge return on investment over and above what we might have seen in the past. So I think when we wrote the book on cyber adversary profiling, and I'm about to start running over, so I'll start wrapping this up, we really looked at 2 things. What is the capability and the motivation of the attacker? And what circumstances could manifest themselves in such a way that the motivation and capability are there to cause a problem for us? And what are the catastrophic things that could happen to our organization? So if you really start thinking about those things, you can start understanding the technologies that you need. What are the TTPs we're most likely to see? What are the technologies that we're going to see that are really going to make a difference? And how can we measure those, that effect on really preventing breaches, reducing the cost of, we're going to get breached, right? It's going to happen, but how can we reduce the impact of those breaches? And then how can we evaluate technologies in a way that we can fail fast, right? We buy technologies way too often. We leave them in the network for 2 or 3 years. We've kind of acknowledged that they're bad, that they're not giving us the return that the vendor told us that we would, but we're leaving it there. So we need to fail fast on all of these technologies and redirect funding in ways that really gives us more of an ROI. So the real message I want to bring to you today is that next time you're at a trade show, and I'm not going to mention any names, but once you're in 1 million square feet of trade show floor, getting pitched by the next whiz-bang thing, really think about, go there with an agenda, right? What types of things am I looking for? How is it going to bring an ROI to me? Do I already have it? I've already tried this. How is it going to really help me leap ahead and think differently? And how am I going to fail fast and measure the ROI of this thing if I do decide to put it on my network? So, thank you all.